We're coming to you from the DraftKings.com podcasting studios. DraftKings.com, America's one-day fantasy sports site, where it's like a new season every time you play. DraftKings.com.
From ESPN's Pod Center, this is NBA Lockdown.
Welcome into another edition of the NBA Lockdown podcast alongside Israel Gutierrez. I'm Jorge Sedano. And we've got some news already right off the top here on the show. We'll get into all the games and all the stuff that went down last night. But Kawhi Leonard is your defensive player of the year. I don't know if I'm completely shocked about this. He missed some games, which I thought might have led to maybe Draymond Green winning. We all know Doc Rivers thought that DeAndre Jordan should have won this award. But were you surprised that Kawhi won, or did you think that the voters got this thing right?
No, as one of the voters, I don't think it was correct and just for one reason. I mean, he missed 18 games, and Draymond missed 3, and, that's 18% more of the schedule that Draymond played than Kawhi. I mean, Kawhi essentially missed an entire month of the season, and if you're asking me who I think is the best defender in the NBA, I think Kawhi Leonard is the best individual defender in the NBA. But does that mean he had the best season? No. As a defensive player, no, not necessarily. Because, again, early on, he didn't even play as well as he's playing now. Basically ever since he got back from the hand injury, he's been at his best. And, so essentially that's for more than half of the season. But still, it's about that stretch. And Draymond from day one has been, the most versatile defender in the league, has been, making that team what it is in terms of the best defensive team in the league, and I think he deserves Defensive Player of the Year. And I do think Kawhi, if he plays, anywhere between 70 and 82 games for the next 5 years, could win it any single year over the next 5. He's probably going to win multiple. But this was Draymond's award, I thought, this year. He probably might not win it again or get, even this close again. And I think he got robbed a little bit, yeah.
Well, yeah, again, I think the game's argument is certainly valid here. And here's the other argument I would make for Draymond Green. When Andrew Bogut went out, and look, Andrew Bogut if he's a guy that, and he's had a history of injury issues, but if that guy's ever healthy, he's obviously a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year too. With that said, when Draymond Green was out, when Andrew Bogut was out this season, Draymond Green was really good. The Warriors were thought to fall apart, right? We all assumed that if Bogut was out for a significant amount of time, they'd fall apart. Well, the Warriors allowed, I think it was, I'm looking at it here. Hold on. I found it on Tom Haberstroh had a tweet about it earlier. Here it is. It was actually in one of his stories. He had it. Warriors allowed just 98.8 points per 100 possessions when Bogut was out. So that in itself goes to show you, here's the guy that everyone assumes is the anchor of their defense, right, going into the season and in general over the last couple of years, and has been the reason why they haven't moved further at times because of his injury history. Well, he was out, and they were still one of the best teams in the league defensively, and that is what you said. It's the versatility of Draymond Green. Yeah, so I'm in agreement with you.
A couple of things that hurt him was one, for some, he got 8 more first-place votes, Draymond Green, than Kawhi. Right. But for some reason, didn't get even close to the second and third-place votes that Kawhi got. So Kawhi basically won this off the second and third-place votes because it was only a difference of 16 total points. And then it was DeAndre Jordan getting 32 first-place votes, which I think is just people looking at, the playing numbers, the rebounding numbers, the block shots numbers, and thinking, that is the simple way to judge a defender. And DeAndre Jordan wasn't first in Defensive Player of the Year. He was a great defensive player this year, but he did not deserve 32 first-place votes. It was clearly, I thought, between the other two guys, they had more of an individual impact and at different positions and for different reasons. And that hurt Dre because obviously Dre had more, first-place votes and probably could have gotten some more even if they weren't all going to DeAndre. So that it's just a weird little, an odd voting situation here, and the fact that it was only 16 points, difference, I think, Dre should get credit for having a fantastic year, But I think Kawhi kind of stole it from him at the end. And it's one of those situations where it speaks to how long the season is. Because if people are entirely ignoring that he missed 1 month of the season, I mean, if you miss a month of the football season, you're missing a quarter of your schedule, and you're probably not up for MVP or anything like that. And this, and Kawhi, of course, played his best defense in the last 2 months of the season, which is most memorable. You almost forget, again, like you mentioned, when Bogut was out, how far back that was in the season and how they still flourished in large part because of Draymond. So he's hurt also because of the timing, obviously, of the season.
Where I would disagree with you is I don't feel like he stole it. Like, I feel like that's kind of a harsh word, and Spurs fans are going to ridicule you in your mentions today.
I said, I was the only person who picked Kawhi Leonard to win Defensive Player of the Year before the season. And like I said, he's probably and should win multiple awards, Defensive Player of the Year awards, because he's that good. This particular season, he was that good for about 3 months. And Draymond Green was fantastic. It's not hating hard, Josh. It's not hating hard. It's Josh hating hard. You know what? He's trying to send the Spurs fans at me. I see where this is going. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. I have too much ammunition. I have too much evidence.
Michelle Beadle is going to be really PO'd at you, Israel
I'm sure she's not going to listen to the rest of this. I was only going to listen to part of it where it says that he stole it. But he kind of stole it from
Josh,
edit
everything else that Izzy has said here and just make sure you keep the he stole it part in there.
I'm on it.
It's one of those, it's a marathon, not a sprint arguments, and Kawhi just closed. Kawhi closed. He had that sprinter speed down the stretch.
Yeah, he did. Now, here's some fun facts from this same Tom Haberstroh article about Draymond Green that I found. A sample of guys whom Green has stolen the ball from multiple times this season. Guys that don't obviously let this happen very often. LeBron James, Chris Paul, Jeff Teague, Kyle Lowry, Rudy Gay, Giannis Antetokounmpo, I don't know if I said that right, Enes Kanter, Zach Randolph, Andrew Wiggins, and Eric Bledsoe. And get this. Now, this one actually to me is even more impressive, potentially. A list of players Green has blocked multiple times this season. Dirk Nowitzki, 5 times. I mean, look, we've always talked about for years, and I know Dirk is not the same guy he once was, but we've always talked about the one guy, right, in the league who's got an unblockable shot is Dirk Nowitzki, and he did that 5 times against him. That's pretty impressive.
A bunch of threes, too. I don't have that story up, but I know he's blocked a bunch of threes, Draymond has. So, again, it speaks to his versatility. But, like I said, and I think people are, maybe some voters are just trying to, maybe they're projecting a little bit because, like I said, Kawhi is already the best defensive player in the league. And I don't even know if Draymond would argue with that. Like, Kawhi is just physically that gifted, and which is seemingly all the time now. He's the best defensive player in the league, but I think you're sort of rushing to give him the award because he was so good down the stretch, and you ignore the fact that, again, that he missed as many games as he did. But, not to take anything away from him, because like I said, he might own this award for the next 3 or 4 years. I would think that team still has to be good, so maybe if you have people, if Tim retires or anything like that, then maybe they'll look elsewhere, but I still think they'd be good regardless. But anyway, just a little. It's a little complaint. It's not a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like Draymond's going to care if he's got the trophy at the end of the year. And for those who say I'm being a Warriors homer, I didn't even vote Steph Curry for MVP. I voted James Harden for MVP.
Oh, there you go. So basically, what you're telling the voters here, Izzy, is Kawhi, you do this.
Kawhi, you do this. What happened?
All right, so we've got that. Now let's get into this game. There we go, laugh track. Always makes it feel better. All right, let's get into this game yesterday. I was furious, okay, because for a number of reasons. I'd been up early, I'd been traveling, I was really tired, and I was doing everything I could to stay up. I was pacing around my house. The game was exciting. I eventually said, all right, I'll just start watching it from bed. I actually fell asleep at the beginning of the fourth quarter, but luckily woke up with 2 minutes to go. And then, of course, wake up to Blake Griffin, who had been having a monster game, turning the ball over a couple of times. And all I could think about was this discussion I had with Tom Penn recently, where he made this comment that Amin and I had talked about how I'd never heard anyone say this. Basically, Penn was saying that at the end of games, he didn't really trust Blake because he's a little out of control at times. And I'm like, and this was 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, I don't know. I've never heard anyone say that. So, of course, I have him on, we talk about it, we go back and forth, and then 2 weeks later, it happens, right? In a playoff game, game 2, he dribbles the ball off his leg.
I agree with that.
A couple of times.
He's
and it's like cherry picking. We are cherry picking here.
Well, that's true. He's got so many moves. He's got so many spins. He's got all this stuff. He could be loose with the ball, yeah. And
okay, but out of control.
I probably wouldn't. No, I wouldn't say out of control. I would say it's not something that I would have thought of myself. But when you say it, I understand where he's coming from. You know what I mean? I don't know about not trusting him down the stretch. I think he's easier to play. I mean, like the Spurs did. Just back up. Just back off of him. And they did so in the second half. And, even as an improved jump shooter, I think he's only hitting in the low 40s, maybe 41, 42% on that jump shot. So you just play the percentages there. But he's an improved free throw shooter. So I don't know if I wouldn't trust him down the stretch. But if you're playing off of him and he's got to force it to get to the basket, yeah, I could see turnovers happening there, absolutely.
But my thing at the end of the day was, oh, here we go. Here come the hot takes. Oh, it's all Blake's fault. And look, I know what he said at the end of the game. I know he put it all on himself. Let's hear the audio. Go ahead, play it.
That game's pretty much 100% on me. I got the ball and up two, needed to take care of it, needed to get a good shot or try to get fouled and turn it over. So the game's on me.
All right, what else is supposed to say there?
You had a triple-double. You had 29, 12, and 11. You wouldn't even be in that situation if you weren't giving these guys that type
That's
of
my point.
effort. But
yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly my point.
I think this is more about the Spurs when you consider what they did without – Tony Parker for 30 minutes was invisible, and Tony Parker had the Achilles strain or what have you. Manu, 22 minutes, fouled out. So you got Tim Duncan, Kawhi Leonard, and, you get Patty Mills having and this was it was reminiscent at times of, their run last season because you had any number of guys coming in and giving them a big performance. And now, so you've got a vintage Tim, and you got Kawhi playing a standard game these days, and then you Horace and Patty Mills, and they kind of saved the day. And overcome a triple-double and, force, if you will, a late turnover from Blake. So that was the Clippers' series to take, control of in one, short crunch time stretch, and they didn't do it. Instead, Patty Mills comes up big, and you're looking at the Spurs in the perfect position. And so, yeah, it was heavy, and I understand why Blake – wanted to take the ending and put the blame on himself because it's a huge game. But come on, back off, just take a deep breath and realize that, you guys can play that same way and maybe win in San Antonio because, yeah, you can't blame yourself when you got a triple-double.
No, yes, agreed. And that was kind of my thing is and then you know how people are, the instant analysis, hot take reaction in this hot takety-take society when I'm sitting there saying exactly what you said, which is, okay, we're all going to blame Blake except they wouldn't be in the game without him. Well, but he had the turnovers in winning time, in crunch time, in clutch time. And I'm like, I want to punch myself in the face repeatedly right now. My mentions was just full of that. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to shut this thing off because I'm not going to sit here and start swinging at everybody here, on Twitter, because it's just going to drive myself insane. It's already 2:30 in the morning. I need to go to sleep here. So,
well, I will say this though, it is too much of a reliance on Blake and Chris Paul. I
Correct.
guess DeAndre Jordan had a big game.
Yeah, how about Matt Barnes, by the way?
Bench, yeah.
Matt Barnes had that shot that ended up having Patty Mills leak out there at the end. And
exactly.
DeAndre Jordan missed 97 free throws, in the fourth quarter.
Missed 11 free throws. But, there's too much pressure on those two guys in general. And you look at the bench. Jamal Crawford, 1 for 7 from 3, and he finished with 11 points. And you get nothing else. You get a couple of buckets from Austin Rivers and 1 from Hito. Meanwhile, again, like I said, that Spurs bench, saved that team. So if Blake maybe feels like there's that much burden on him, I can understand that because that's just flat out true. He and Chris Paul, they both could have had triple doubles in this game and couldn't have gotten enough help. So this is the fear. This was the fear when it came to the Clippers in the postseason was who else is going to show up, and will these two be enough? And after that first game, everybody's like, hey, Clippers, they're championship material. We've been saying this from the beginning. And after this game, you're looking at it and saying, okay, this is what we were afraid of.
Yeah, no, listen, again, we've talked about this before, and I think we agree on this. Doc Rivers, the general manager, has failed Doc Rivers, the coach. And you and I covered a Miami Heat team for years where Pat Riley was that same guy. And he, at times, even admitted, yeah, look, Pat Riley, the GM, failed Pat Riley, the coach, or vice versa, one way or the other. It's hard to do both jobs. And they have 6 elite guys in their rotation. And then after that, you're like, all right, whatever. I mean, you just mentioned Hedo Turkoglu hitting a shot late in the game. I mean, seriously, Hedo Turkoglu still hitting shots late in the game, or actually getting minutes late in the game, was amazing to me. So that seems to be kind of the issue with that team, and it was kind of the issue I thought going into the series, and Amin brought it up, which is how long can you ride those 6 guys, basically, against a team like San Antonio until the wheels break off? And I get that they're dealing with injuries and they have their own issues. Yeah, you don't think they have 6 elite guys? I mean, well, no. I guess elite is relative. Like 6
okay, and what they do, like,
really
okay, you throw
J.J.
Redick in there as a shooter, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like,
he's
okay, Blake,
shooter.
DeAndre, Chris Paul, J.J. Redick, Jamal Crawford. I count 5.
Okay, well, Barnes is a starter. So, well, he's not an elite guy.
Yeah,
all right, so, all right. But they have 6 good rotation guys. Is that fair to say? 6 really good rotation guys?
Yes.
Okay, so
yes, and then
that's
after
fair.
That, they're lost.
Right. But, yeah, they've got nothing. So I think here, but everyone's going to focus on Blake because that's what we do. We did it to LeBron. Remember, for years, LeBron isn't clutch. He doesn't have the clutch gene. You versus Skip Bayless on First Take. I remember you guys having that conversation multiple times. So, look, it's what we do. We did it to Peyton Manning. He's a choker. And everybody's a choker until we see them win it. And it's just, I feel like the conversation is silly at this point.
Meanwhile, so far in the 2-game series against one of the better defenses in the league, he's averaging 27.5 points, 12 rebounds, 8.5 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals.
Boom.
That's pretty good.
That's what I'm talking about. All right, we talked about Doc Rivers and how the GM, Doc Rivers, has failed Doc Rivers, the coach. He did have a really funny interaction, I think, yesterday in the post-game press conference. He was asked about the loss, and the question, he had, I think, the best response you could have had. I would say this reporter was lucky it wasn't Popovich that was on the receiving end of this. Play the sound.
Doc, how disappointing was it to lose this game?
Do I have to actually answer that question? I mean, really. I was disappointed, but, it's a loss. We win the next one, we're happy again.
Yeah.
You're supposed to measure it, like a scale of 1 to 10. How disappointed are you? I'm a 9.5.
I would say it's a 9.9, reporter. Yeah, it's look, he handled it great. But you, having been someone who's interviewed coaches many a time on the sideline, if Greg Popovich gets that question in a postgame, the reaction is?
Not a good one. It's probably a long stare down. And maybe a sort of a look around the room to see if anybody else saves him. And then, let's see, what would he say? How disappointed? He'd probably just, put his fingers together, and separate them by an inch and say, this much? And then wait for the next question. He's very literal with his answers.
Yeah. So anyway, at least Doc was the guy on the receiving end of that. And look, we've all, we've all been there. I think we've all asked questions. We're like, I probably shouldn't have asked that one. So hopefully, luckily again, it wasn't.
I've never done that.
Really? Never?
I never question my questions. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, stop!
That ain't true.
Randy Whitman would disagree with you, Gutierrez, even though he just heard you wrong.
Randy, let me finish Whitman.
Oh, God. So anyhow, all right, so moving on from that series, then we had Atlanta and Brooklyn. And, all right, do we want to start here with the notion that Atlanta needs a quote-unquote more decisive win, or do we want to talk about Darren Williams' tough game? Where do you want to go?
Darren Williams, please.
All right, we go Darren Williams for 200. Let's start off with some audio from Brooklyn Nets head coach Lionel Hollins.
I'm not. He had 10 rebounds. He had 8 assists. He played well. He was defending. He made some hustle plays. Shooting comes and goes. People can criticize all they want. If they're not in the game performing and doing it and going through the battle, you can't say anything.
But the first part of what he said, people can criticize all they want. I stopped listening right there, so now we will criticize. How does he go from – now, it's not like Darren Williams has been this guy all season long, because especially down the stretch when they were going to make this playoff push, he was playing particularly well. He had one particularly great stretch where he had a 26-point game, a 31-point game. And the assist numbers, I think, in April, and I know it's not a ton of games, in April, he averaged 15 and 8 and, 5 rebounds, and that's a pretty good month. And I know he's not super duper star right there like everybody thought he would be, but it was improving. And then you come out with that performance in a winnable game. I know it was 10 rebounds and 8 assists, but the 1 for 7, you watched him play. It was just, there wasn't anything decisive. He wasn't really a threat. It's sad, but I don't know, if what Paul Pierce said is maybe right. Maybe he doesn't, I don't know. He's just a guy you cannot rely on anymore. He's an average point guard, and that's just a performance you can't get away with. You just can't.
Can't do it.
Yeah, look, man, 1 of 7 when you're relied upon as one of the main or one of the key cogs on that particular team, it's just inexcusable. I don't look, and I hate to have the conversation about money but this is what ends up going back to. So I'm not that guy, but I've already seen it today on Twitter, and I've seen it on shows today where they're like, he's the 8th highest paid player in the NBA. Okay, well, that was also prior to several injuries that I think have hurt him. And look, just the fact that his skills have diminished. But 1 of 7 is still inexcusable in that spot. And I know what Lionel's trying to do there, because you're supposed to defend your guy. Though he has kind of run some other guys under the bus this year, but he apparently has a good relationship with Darren.
Yeah, he did that in 28 minutes. So, I guess that's that kind of production in terms of outside of the shooting in 28 minutes is pretty good. But the fact that he's only playing 28 minutes says, another thing altogether. I guess Jarrett.
Right. Jarrett Jack is playing a lot.
Yeah. And that's, and Jarrett is hit or miss. He's a guy, he's literally hit or miss. If he's hitting, he's great. If he's not, he's a waste out there. And so you need to have a guy that you can rely on, and Darren isn't that guy. I will say, going over to that Hawks part of the conversation where you said they have to have a more decisive win, the sneaky part about the way they've won, especially in Game 2 yesterday, is that's the Hawks. They just missed shots, but if you look, 27 assists on 35 field goals, only 8 turnovers, spread the scoring out, won 5 guys in double figures, and had a poor shooting night from guys like DeMarre Carroll. That's fine. And, even Mike Scott somehow got 7 shots up in 12 minutes and missed all but one of them, but they were still playing their game, and they still won. And I think, eventually more of these shots are going to fall, and, when they do, you're going to say, okay, that's the Hawks we remember, but that's kind of how they played anyway. They just didn't have a great shooting night.
Yeah, and look, man, I just hate this conversation of, they didn't win decisively enough. We do it in all the sports, too. And it's like, man, there's a win and a loss column. There's not a almost won column or almost lost column. So, you know what, who cares? None of that stuff.
Yeah, we're not taking anything away from the 2008 Boston Celtics championship team because they went 7 games against the Hawks in the first round against an 8 seed and didn't look particularly great. That doesn't matter. The Hawks can shrug off or shake off this series. And a matter of fact, this could be the worst thing to happen to the rest of the Eastern Conference, because if they can win the games where they're not playing great or shooting great, and they find a rhythm as the playoffs go along, maybe they become that juggernaut again. Because they went an entire month without losing a game during this season, so they could get on a roll, and Paul Millsap could start feeling a little bit better or more comfortable playing with that shoulder, and we know how they play otherwise. So, if they can get by this series and not have a decisive, one of those wins that make you say or make you pay attention, then again, that could be bad for the rest of the league because they can get on a roll.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm a believer in them. I think that they've had some injury issues here of late. You mentioned Millsap. Obviously, they don't have Tabo, which I think may hurt them down the road, especially if they end up playing Cleveland, because you need a number of guys, I think, to throw at LeBron. But yeah, I just don't buy into this notion that you got to win decisively. Whatever. I mean, the Clippers won decisively in Game 1. What the hell does that mean? I mean, they're tied at 1-1 now. None of that stuff matters to me. I feel like we just waste energy talking about stuff like that. When we should be focusing on, Darren's poor play. That's a reason why Brooklyn hasn't played well. But that's, you know what? Give Atlanta some credit. Maybe when you look at their game, maybe they beat him up pretty well and they put him in positions to not succeed. I think we're too quick to not really dive into certain aspects of the game, and defense tends to be one of them. So even though we're quick to criticize Darren, maybe we should just give a little love to Atlanta just in general. So anyhow, coming up in a few moments, we'll touch on the Portland series with the Grizz. But we really got to get into this whole Rondo situation. We've got Rondo. We've got maybe some rumors about LaMarcus Aldridge. That's all coming up next in 60 seconds here on the NBA Lockdown Podcast.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Welcome back to the NBA Lockdown Podcast alongside Israel Gutierrez. I'm George Sedano. All right, so Rondo. We didn't think necessarily would work very well. Now we've kind of seen that come to fruition. And then we heard he had a mysterious back injury yesterday from Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle benched him, obviously, late in the game, though he's saying he wasn't really a benching because of the back, whatever. But then was asked, basically, all right, so do you think Rondo has played his last game in a Mavs uniform? Is he going to play again in a Mavs uniform?
Do you expect Rondo to wear a Mavs uniform again?
No, I don't. Yeah, that pretty much sums things up on that relationship right now.
That pretty much does it. What makes me laugh is I love reading Tim McMahon from ESPN Dallas or ESPN.com because he pulls no punches when it comes to Rondo. And here's his lead from this story where it's headlined, "In Carlisle's eyes, Rondo is no kid," as in Jason Kidd. He leads with, "It took about 16 hours to get the story straight about Rajon Rondo's final sorry display in a Dallas Mavericks uniform." I mean, that's just fantastic. It's exactly what it was. It was a sorry display. Like, you look out there and he's like, that guy's sorry. Like, he's not even trying. 8-second violation. But, it's amazing how quickly this has crumbled because, it was supposed to be, this historic offense is only going to get better with Rondo. Didn't really quite work out. Then they started arguing, and I said this yesterday, I talked to a couple of former players, and Rick Carlisle is a very difficult coach to play for. He is that type of guy, like Jason Kidd will even tell you, he's that type of guy that is a micromanager and is really tough on the point guards, et cetera, et cetera. Amin yesterday referenced that Baxter Holmes story in ESPN the magazine on Rondo to sort of get a glimpse as to why you kind of maybe knew this wasn't going to work. With those two clashing, but, the fact that Carlisle's willing to say, Rondo won't be back, not only is he saying in free agency, which I think everybody was just assuming, but, if he's out, what if they come back and win the series? What if they win the next series? Is that back still going to be bothering him, or is he just not wearing a Dallas uniform? So, I mean, obviously the back is not real. That's just that's something that, either he's had plenty of opportunities to bring up, let's say, and has not happened. So, man, this is the way it's going to end with these guys, and he basically dragged this team down since he got there, and it's sad because they had a lot of potential.
Yeah, and look, Chandler Parsons' injury certainly doesn't help either. I mean, that's a real injury that we're talking about, and he's been in and out, throughout the season. So I think that certainly hurts them more so than anything else. But yeah, I'm with you. Look, I didn't think this was a good fit from day one. I got a bunch of mean tweets. Yeah, mean tweets from you, Maverick fans, because you thought I was being a hater. And
Hashtag hate hard.
Wasn't that? It just doesn't make sense. You talk about a ball-dominant guy who doesn't shoot the ball very well, and you've got guys on that roster that want the ball in their hands too, and Monte and Chandler, and it just didn't make sense. And they want to run up tempo, and Rondo wants to slow it down. And to me, the funny thing is, and I had Amin was on the show with me last night on the radio show, and we were talking about okay, well, there's all this talk about Rondo going to the Lakers. Now, I would want to see that only because I feel like the implosion factor is really high. Like him and Kobe, two guys who aren't as good as they used to be, and I thought Amin astutely pointed out, but they don't know that yet. And so I just think that it has a high volume for...
I don't think
You think Kobe knows it at this point?
I do. I think Kobe knows it. I don't think Kobe would have turned into... I don't think he would have turned into Mr. Distributor when he was healthy recently if he still thinks that he could be the guy who drops 35 a game. I think Kobe thinks he's clearly lost something. I know he still thinks he's got great ability, but I don't think he thinks he's Kobe of 10 years ago. I mean, that would be ridiculous. I don't think Rondo has any clue that he has dropped off. And I think he's just waiting for the right team and the right organization again. But I don't even know. I think Kobe personally would do his homework on Rondo. He would read everything up on him. He'd try to figure out what makes him tick, where he can't cross the line. And he would try to be the teammate that gets the best out of him. I just don't think their games work well together. So personality-wise, I think Kobe would do his best to make that work. But in terms of just basketball chemistry, I don't think that makes much sense. But and I really don't think the Lakers are just in the business of bringing in big names anymore, even if it's toward the back end of the final year, let's say, of Kobe's career. I think they're looking past that and they're saying to themselves, well, what are we going to do with Rajon Rondo in 2016, 2017 if we sign him to a long-term deal? What's he going to be for us? So I just have a hard time. I think somebody's going to give him something in the neighborhood of a 2 or 3 year deal, maybe capping out at 10 a year. But it's going to have to be an ideal situation for that team because nothing about what he's done over the last few years has said franchise point guard anymore.
No, yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. And again, I think he's a guy who's been living on reputation for a couple of years now. And I think that's the thing that, as you pointed out, I don't think he's aware of. His defensive numbers aren't what they used to be. Everyone talks about, 10.8 assists led the NBA in assists before he left. But, Tom Haberstro's written the article a bunch of times about how he's cherry-picked assists. Even when he played with Paul and Ray and Kevin and those type of guys, there was some of that to be said and found in his resume. So, look.
Haberstro should really write different things in if he's written that a million times.
Well, that's true. Excellent point by you. He really should vary it up.
Change it up, Haberstroh. Come on.
You can't throw fastballs all day, Haberstroh. Throw a changeup and a curveball every once in a while. Yeah, look, is he still a guy that can help you? Yes, I think that he can, given the right situation. I just don't know if he is, as you said, a franchise point guard, starting guy. I think if he went to the right situation, let's say if he went to Memphis as a backup to Mike Conley, don't you think that would be a good fit for him? Ideally, because of the way they play?
That team has, they got to get some shooting. They got to spread the
floor
out.
No, I get it, but a backup point guard role.
Yeah, but he'd never do that.
No, but that's my point, is that he'd never do it, but that's probably what he's better suited for at this stage. For a championship team.
Probably.
Yeah, for a championship team.
You're talking about a significant drop-off in from what he was expecting. Even going into this year, much less going into the offseason. But can we talk about Scotty Brooks here? Because I'm going to get upset if Billy Donovan goes there. So I just want to change the subject.
Well, I think Billy Donovan's a bad idea there, too, for a number of reasons.
Well, are you surprised they fired Scotty Brooks? Because I was. I thought they would have given Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, say, look, this is it. You guys go get it this year. Stay healthy if you can, whatever. But, here's your guy, the guy you want, the guy you trusted over the years. I don't want to make a change going into such a big year and a year that I know you guys have a lot of, hope for and championship aspirations. we don't want to gamble with somebody who might not work out for you. We want to go with a guy that you know and we know. And I think they would have stayed with Scottie Brooks for at least another year. And then, I guess the issue then would have been, hey, let's say they don't win it all, and then all of a sudden you're going to have to find the coach if you replace Scottie Brooks that Durant's going to want as he's in free agency. So at least now you give him a year to acclimate himself to this new head coach, whoever it's going to be, and then you could convince him to say, hey, he really worked out for us. Stay put. Let's re-sign you. Yada yada. So I could see both sides of that, but I was still a little surprised by that. In large part because I thought even with Scott Brooks, they could have won a title next year if everybody was healthy. So, I was surprised by it, but I also I agree with you in that how's Billy Donovan, how's he supposed to be the guy who comes in and turns this great team into an elite team, into a championship team, and saves the franchise basically because by having Kevin Durant stay when he's never coached an NBA game in his life? I just find it really, really difficult to put that type of pressure on that head coach. And, I don't know how you're going to be, Oklahoma City's going to say comfortably to themselves, all right, this is the guy that's going to bring us to a championship or bring us back to the finals and allow us to keep Kevin Durant when you've seen zero evidence that he can do that.
Yeah, no, listen, I get that. And here's the thing. It was a little bit of a surprise, but then in retrospect it wasn't. Because if I forgot who said this, but God, somebody on one of our colleagues said it recently. Maybe it was Stein. I don't know, but somebody was saying it today that that breaking up with Scott Brooks, it was never like the right time. It was always Christmas or Valentine's, and they like him so much as a person that they never found the right time. Well, here's the right time. They didn't make the playoffs for the first time in eons. And they were like, all right, we've been meaning to do this because we don't think offensively he's the right guy. We've become a little too predictable in the playoffs. And, all right, now it's time to go. And they even got KD to sign off on it, assumingly. I mean, it's what it seems like that was the case. So I think that the more I thought about it, I wasn't. There was the initial shock, but I wasn't as I moved along. The other part of this is, and I'm with you, I think Billy Donovan is putting potentially in an unenviable position. Because you got to be the guy to keep Kevin Durant, and if you don't, you're stuck there. But some people say, well, the risk is worth it to have Durant and Westbrook on the team, even if it's just for 1 year, and see how it goes. I just don't think Billy's demeanor is the right guy. Is the right kind of demeanor you need for a guy in the NBA. He had that whole 7-minute experiment, I think, or whatever it was.
Listen, I think Billy is ready to make the jump to the NBA. I think this would put him in two ways. It would put him in a great situation because, gosh, how many guys make this jump to the NBA and you got like that championship ready-made team right in front of you. But on the other end, it's, all right, well, now it's all or nothing, and I've never done this before. So, and he could surround himself with a very NBA experienced staff, and they could make that work. And you could sell me on it. Let's put it that way. But my initial instinct is no way. My other part about that is I think Kevin Ollie is a good guy to have because of his NBA playing experience and basically being an assistant coach on the toward the end of his NBA tenure and his experience with playing with Kevin Durant, etc. I think he would be a good guy to bring in now. I just don't know if he's going to leave UConn. Plus, I think he's got like a $5 million buyout over there, so it's tough. But then again, the answer, who is the answer? You know what I'm saying? Is there going to be some sort of retread? Are you going to pull somebody? Is Tom Thibodeau going to get, leave Chicago and then you can get him? So there, I don't know what the obvious answer is, but my gut instinct is to say that puts Billy and Oklahoma City in a tough spot.
See, I know there's Mark Jackson's name's been bandied about as well, and you mentioned Tibbs. I don't know if any of them are necessarily a good fit. I don't know if I want Tibbs with Kevin Durant coming off an injury, okay? I don't know if I want Mark Jackson because my complaints about Mark Jackson's or criticism about Mark Jackson has been very similar to my criticism of Scott Brooks, and I just don't think Billy's the right guy. I think he doesn't have running particular style of offense in college that I say, oh, wow, yeah, he can make the jump, plus the demeanor thing. He's used to being the star. That's not the case in the NBA. Honestly, who I'd like to see?
I'd argue with you on that, but that's Billy over the years has changed a lot, and he's very much I think he would be a great balance of player coach and coach. But Anyway.
Well, Chandler Parsons would probably disagree, right? I feel like Chandler Parsons would probably disagree. Billy kind of rode him a little bit. It wasn't that long ago.
Well, I know. I mean, he's an aggressive coach. Like, he coaches his guys, but I don't think he cares 1 second about being in the spotlight whatsoever.
I'd throw out Mike D'Antoni, but everyone's going to think I'm crazy. Real quick, this Grizzlies Portland series, this is over, right?
It is, and hopefully LaMarcus Aldridge doesn't go anywhere because, I saw Mark Stein's report said the two teams in Texas, Dallas, and San Antonio think they have a shot with him. I'd like to see what they can continue to do building around those two guys, but this series, yeah, it's over.
He's Israel Gutierrez. I'm George Sedano. Thanks for listening to the NBA Lockdown podcast. We'll catch you tomorrow. Have a great night and enjoy the game.
Thanks for listening to NBA Lockdown on ESPN Radio. For more great podcasts, check out the Pod Center page on ESPNradio.com.